Welcome to the Wealth Matters podcast, where investors come together to better understand how to build passive cash flow and create generational wealth without all the confusing mumbo-jumbo. Here's your host and co-author of Amazon #1 bestseller, Alpesh Pamar.
Welcome to Wealth Matters podcast. I am going to talk to another triathlete, a two-time Ironman finisher, John Hopfensperger. He's the founder and president of CMK Properties LLC. John is responsible for leading the overall strategy and operations of CMK Properties. He has over 30 years of experience in the commercial real estate industry. So welcome, John.
Thank you, Alpesh. Great to be here. I'm a fan of the podcast, so this is wonderful.
I appreciate it. So, John, we, of course, want to talk about the early childhood education. Before we get started, I want to ask you something which I ask every guest. Tell us something interesting or maybe funny about yourself.
Okay, so interesting. Maybe I was born and raised on a dairy farm, so that was quite an upbringing. And I've been self-employed since college.
Wow.
And it seems to be a rare thing. I've done a couple Ironman, so that's somewhat interesting to people. But
it is very interesting. For me, the Ironman is very interesting. And I think my listeners already know that I did my first half Ironman last year, 9/11 actually. Of course, I remember the day, but doing two Ironman, that's hats off to you, sir. That's crazy.
Thank you.
What was your first investment and how did it work out for you?
My very first investment was a two-family fixer-upper project. This is back in Wisconsin. It was in a not so great area, but I didn't have much money or little or no money at the time. So I had to find a seller that would do seller financing in a project that I could basically do the sweat equity. So all the work that I could do myself on it, I did, but it was in terrible condition. But it was what a learning experience. I ended up doing all the work I could. I hired a jack of all trades that could do electrical, plumbing, sheetrock finishing. We got the project completed. I rented it out. It ended up positive cash flowing almost $500 a month, which I thought was great.
Nice.
And that was my start. And subsequently, over the next 2 years, I did 20 more projects similar to that. So just that really got the ball rolling for me way back then, that little property. And I mean, I still remember the address. It was 1138 Day Street. It was very formative to get me going.
And when was this and which town?
This was in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Okay.
And so let's see.
Green Bay Packers, right?
Green Bay Packers. Big
That's
fan.
how I know.
Yes, I'm a shareholder. So this would be back probably 1990.
Oh, wow. You did
Yeah.
the rehab and, the bird strategy at that time. That's pretty cool.
And trying to find no money down deals. That was way back then. That was, I had bought a couple of those programs online and was working my way through trying to figure out how to underwrite a property, how to pencil my own pro forma. So I had to look at so many deals to finally get one that I could get seller financing. I really didn't have any credit. So to finally get that first deal as a start in real estate investing and then have it work out, get it rented. It was the greatest feeling. And I loved it. And I've been in real estate ever since.
That's crazy. So, and the reason I asked you for the town is that actually my real estate journey, even though I live in California, my journey started by investing in out-of-state property in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Kidding.
Yes, in 2015. And that's how I started. I bought one, I bought another one. And then I knew the neighborhood wasn't good, but the things were working out. So I just continued to invest. And then, of course, I got out of Wisconsin, but I knew the area by that time. Harley Davidson was one of my clients. I had visited the area as well.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned Milwaukee. So we've done a lot of work there, but we did University of Milwaukee,
Uh-huh.
big student housing facility we developed right on the river downtown Milwaukee, and it ended up their endowment fund was the big
Yes.
investor. They is the
Wow.
owner of that, but it was a great project for us. I love Milwaukee. There's a lot of great things happening there. So that's really neat. That was your
That is,
first
yeah,
market.
yeah. And my first client was also Kohler Company, Wisconsin in Sheboygan. So,
Wow. That is, I mean, I think most people know Kohler for a huge plumbing
yes,
manufacturer, but what a client. That
yes.
they're a great company.
Yeah, no, I can't argue. So, what kind of assets do you invest in now?
Mhm. So we're a commercial real estate developer and a sponsor. So what we invest in now, 100% of it we're developing. We're not doing any acquisitions right now just because they don't pencil. We make far more money developing, but our focus is single tenant, net lease, commercial properties. And for your listeners, single tenant net lease means one tenant, one long-term lease, a
Right, triple
net
net.
lease. Yep, triple net. So the tenant's responsible for all the maintenance,
Yep.
insurance, utilities. That way, as a landlord or investor, it's very predictable
Right,
revenue,
it's
and it's on
steady.
one piece of property, right, Alpesh? So
Yeah.
there's very few moving parts in those kind of deals. So we find them to be very predictable for the outcome. And we're a preferred developer for a number of brands. We're doing Tractor Supply Company right now. We've done a number of Dollar Generals, the Learning Zone, an ECE brand that
Okay.
we'll talk about, the Learning Experience. We also do medical office buildings as the other core sector that we invest in and develop for. So we're developing right now in Nashville for Williamson Medical Center. We've got a medical campus on the north side of Houston. We just signed a big lease with Memorial Hermann and United Surgery Partners. And then we're also in Dallas, Texas with some medical. But single tenant net lease and medical are our core
That's
product.
that's amazing. So you picked the right niche, right? And the markets, right? Nashville, Houston, Dallas, and of course, medical centers or, learning zone or those, early childhood facilities. They are awesome. So can you tell us what is early childhood education?
Yeah, so I guess in the broad sense, it's the educational program that takes care of for children in their preschool years, and so it's more than just daycare, sending your child to a babysitter, right? It's actual, like for the Learning Zone, they have a STEAM-based program where even at a really young age, they're teaching kids cognitive skills, social interaction skills. And I had looked up a statistic and I thought it was interesting. It said children's brains develop faster from birth to age 5 than any other time in their lives. In fact,
Wow.
90% of brain development occurs before kindergarten. So it's a very high demand area as far as consumer spending. Next to somebody's home, children are what they spend the most on. So you
Right.
find statistically 64% of children under the age of 5 are in an all-day preschool program
Yes.
or need to be. So it's very high demand. It's a growing industry, and that's what early childhood education is.
So how does one invest in those kind of opportunities?
Great question. And I think, you know, it would be neat. I think maybe let me just, if I could say, why would you want to invest in those
Right.
type of
Yes. Yeah, of
opportunities?
course. I would
So,
want to
so
know
let's,
pros and cons.
yeah, we'll touch on that, and then definitely we'll answer how can you invest in it. But I think there's a few things, and for our company, the common denominators when we're filtering deals that we want to develop, and as a real estate owner, I think it all comes down to the tenant. But we start with the industry. Is it a growing industry? Is there a long track record and a long runway for growth? It's got to check that box. And then it's all about the tenant and the credit. Are they credit rated, credit worthy? Do they have a strong track record or balance sheet? Because the certainty of our mailbox money or the rent payments, right, depends on the stability and track
Yes.
record of the tenant. So industry's got to check the box, tenant's got to check the box, and then it's the lease structure. We love, like you said, triple net leases so that an HVAC unit goes bad or there's maintenance or things, it's all on the tenant.
Right.
So as a landlord or investor, your cash flow is very predictable. And with our deals in early childhood education, we're getting a 15-year base lease term.
Nice.
Annual rent escalators are built
Right.
in, so it's a nice hedge against inflation. We're getting a corporate guarantee behind the lease, so we like all the, I guess, the stability of it. And then these are all private pay, Alpesh. So we're developing in very affluent, high growth areas with high demand, where
Of
there's
course.
typically a 1 year waiting list or more for parents to get their children into a preschool. So as we're developing and building these, they're filling up in under 12 months. So why, I guess, invest in those? It meets to us all of the key fundamentals of solid, stable, predictable is our mantra. And then we're finding our typical return on investment, or IRR, 14 to 19%. And they're throwing off about 8% cash flow when we finish the building. So as a risk-adjusted return, we really like the deal, and our investors like the deals. So that's why, in our opinion, why invest in ECE. And then depending on the person, are they accredited or how much capital they have? I guess if you're flush with capital and you can afford to buy a whole property, in our case, a typical ECE is $7 to $8 million. So we're putting down 35% cash. So if somebody has that kind of capital, they could go on to CoStar, LoopNet, Crexi, and look for an ECE deal, and hopefully be very knowledgeable, because like anything else, the leases are different, the guarantee structures are different. You just really want to understand the structure. But if you're flush with capital, you really know the industry, you know the tenant very well, you're comfortable, you could invest in and buy your own property. For us, we're a sponsor, so that means we use an LLC structure and we syndicate our deal. So we let LPs or limited partner silent investors be able to invest and diversify. You can, our minimum in most cases is like 50,000. So you can kind of dip your toe in the water and get involved with a group like us, or find a very experienced sponsor with a track record. You would need to be accredited for all our deals. And in that case, it means $1 million net worth, not including your primary residence. So $1 million net worth, I think it's $200,000 a year in annual income.
If you are single, and 300,000 if you're married filing jointly.
There you go. So that's right. And if you're not accredited or you don't meet those standards, there's some other there's maybe some crowdfunding tools or other offerings that you could seek out. You could also, if you find a deal, you could come to a sponsor or somebody and say, here's the deal, get some participation in it that way. So there's other ways to get involved with early childhood education, real estate investment.
That's awesome. Thank you for explaining that. So how do you underwrite this type of deal? What do you do first to get this type of deal? Do you start with a location? Let's pick Nashville, right? A growing market, hot market. And then you buy a land and figure out who would be the tenant, or you already work with the tenant, like the learning zone before you even buy a land or location, right? And figure out the steps.
Yeah, great. So we start with the tenant, and we build a relationship with the tenant, and there's a criteria. We talked about some of it, but they need to be Amazon resistant, pandemic
Right.
resistant, strong balance sheet, long historical operating track record, the industry that we want to be in, type of real estate we want to own. So if that's all a fit, we create the relationship with the tenant in an agreement where our company will be the exclusive or a primary developer for them in a certain area. So once we have the relationship with the tenant, we will look at their key demand drivers. So if they already have a tailwind of locations, we'll look at their most successful locations. And we have some demographic mapping tools we use. So we can then put those key demand drivers into a mapping tool and then go into any market, heat map the market, find out the areas where all those key demand drivers come together. And then we find the sites and the locations. We get boots on the ground. In the case of a preschool, for example, typically acre and a half. We want great visibility, great access. There's a certain number of children under the age of 6 in a 10-minute radius, typically over $100,000 of income. And we look for 2 to 3 times the national average growth. And then we want to make sure the demand is there, where there's a long waiting list in the existing preschools. But to your question, it starts for us with the tenant, and then we find the market with the tenant, but then we go and find the sites. After we find the sites, we go through entitlement, zoning. We have, if a tenant doesn't already have a prototype, we help them develop a prototype, because there's no, if you wonder why McDonald's look the same or
Yes.
Dollar Generals, right? It's because if you're cookie cuttering the same building over and over and over and over, you get very good at understanding what it costs to
Right.
build the buildings, how it's going to fit on a piece of property. And then you can long lead, you can order the HVAC
Exactly.
or flooring, any of those things that in supply chain issues, you can warehouse them and not be delayed on the construction. So there's so many benefits of having these prototypical designs. We love it. So we get the property entitled, the building laid out, building bid. We get a guaranteed max price, or a GMP contract with our contractor, which means they're going to guarantee to deliver the building for a fixed price, so we don't have that risk. And then on our end, it's simply managing construction schedule and budget. We have to have a solid end date so that our tenant knows when we're turning it over to them, so they can put in their fixtures, furnishings, equipment. They're typically going through a hiring and marketing process up to the opening day. And that's why our tenants love us. We're very process driven. We're like a assembly line process. We always do a ribbon cutting. We turn it over to our tenant. We put live job site video cameras on the project, so our investors and our tenants can see every day what's going on. So it's fun. We love doing it. I used to do some custom, way back when, custom home building and whatnot. For me, it was a nightmare. People are emotional, and it's
Right.
I like doing this, and we're all about the process.
That's great. So let me ask you this question then. What are the markets you are looking at right now, or you're already investing in? Like, which markets are really high growth?
Yeah. Okay. Well, Nashville, so my home
Right.
base, we are all around Nashville. So when people say Nashville, it's that, and it's all the suburbs, because there's so many folks moving in to Nashville and
Of
the suburbs
course.
that it's continuing to grow.
Expanding, yeah.
Expanding all the way around. So we're developing in Spring Hill, which is on the south side. We're doing a medical office building. We're doing 2 preschools on the south side of Nashville. We have sites, gosh, in Cookville. We just finished one in Smyrna. So we're developing all around Nashville right now. And we also, Huntsville, Alabama.
Oh, yes. I like the
It's
market.
Rocket City, USA. It's high tech. FBI has a huge presence, tons of great paying jobs there. Huntsville is also a market that's booming. We love it. We own, I think, 6 sites all around Huntsville right now that we have leases signed for that are in various stages. We are in the north side of Houston. There's the Woodlands and then Wood Forest. It's this gorgeous master planned development. We're doing a medical campus there. We have 8 acres and it's all medical. So we like that market a lot. And what else? Well, those are the primary growth areas that we're in right now. But it's good. There's a lot of work to be had. But we primarily, so it seems like we're Texas east all the way over to the East Coast and then south. So the most of our work is the south, southeast. But I also get up to my old stomping ground, Wisconsin. We follow tenants. We're finishing up a Tractor Supply right now in Wisconsin. So it's awesome.
Crazy. So most of the guests who come on the podcast, either they are single family or multifamily operators, or some are like me, mobile home park. We haven't had anyone who talk about medical buildings and early childhood education. So let me ask you this. What is one of the most overlooked real estate sectors in today's market?
I believe it's ECE, early childhood education. And the reason I say that is very fragmented. You can Google the top operators and you'll see there's only a handful with really a lot, 300 locations, 400 locations. Primarily in the industry, it's still, I'll call them mom and pop operators that have 1, 2, or 3 locations. It's very fragmented. You see a lot of private equity starting to crowd into the space and start doing some roll-ups, buying some smaller operators, rolling them up, and getting on de novo or greenfield development programs like we're working with, where they're building new locations in high growth markets. We like that because if we're able to get in and work with an operator now, they get bought out by large private equity. Immediately, the credit behind our deals increases. And with that, the real estate value increases. We kind of saw that, I think, like 13 years ago when we started doing Dollar General. They weren't really on the radar. And REITs or big institutions were not really buying the DGs. They were only about $1.5 million at a time. And, a REIT or institution usually wants to invest at least 20, 30, 40, or $50 million at a shot. And we saw, our idea was, well, we're going to do these Dollar Generals one at a time, but ultimately we're going to try creating a portfolio of them. And that's what we ended up doing. But to your question, I think early childhood education is under the radar. And I believe if we chat in, 2 or 3 years, it'll be much more prevalent.
Right. Of course. That's what happens. So let's talk about your deals, because you have been doing this for over 30 years now. What has been your best deal so far? And can you share numbers?
Yeah. We've had a lot of best deals. Well, there's because it depends on the deal type. I say that because if you do a value add deal or a turnaround deal, it's higher risk, higher ROI. But so some recent ones, I will say we just sold an outlot that was fabulous, but maybe a more interesting deal. I mentioned Dollar General. That was a great one. We started with, and the reason it's great is because very early on, we started with a thesis or an idea or the fundamentals of how these Dollar Generals or single tenant net lease with that particular tenant would perform. And over the years, we have done about 80 of them, but as we were building up our portfolio, we thought, what if we could do something different? And if you're familiar with Dollar General, you'll see them very rural. You'll be on a
Right.
rural road and there's
Yep.
Dollar General, but it performs well. There's probably, if you're in a satellite, 2,500 people in a 5-mile radius, and they do great. We thought we're going to do something different. We are only going to do Dollar Generals that are in outstanding locations. If they ever went dark, you could put an AutoZone in or some other credit tenant.
Right.
Very rare. So we only did those. We ended up building up an incredible portfolio, and we thought, now this is going to be a great target acquisition for a REIT. So we took it to market in 2022, and we ended up selling it to the largest publicly traded REIT in the country. Numbers wise, I'm under an NDA. I can share what's public. It was a $54.6 million sale.
Wow.
35 store portfolio. It was great for our investors. It was great for the buyer, and for our company. So that, I would say, was just a very rewarding best deal because it was over a long-term period and it behaved like we planned it to. It was very good. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry.
There you go.
What has been your worst deal and what did you learn from it?
Oh gosh. So the one deal we lost money on was an operating company. It had real estate in it, but it was primarily a healthcare operating deal where this operator who was running the healthcare facility wanted to change the use, and it looked like a lot of upside if they could change the use and really increase the NOI, we would have an ownership stake not only in the PropCo, the real estate, but the actual OpCo, the operating company. It didn't work, and we lost a lot of money. It was painful. This was probably 10 years ago or so, and it did not work out. And that, I think, probably taught us. Well, I know it taught us. Stay in your lane.
Lane, yes.
Alpesh, we're real estate developers, right? Let's be a real estate developer, not a hospital operator. And the other thing, if you're going to partner or you're going to joint venture with someone, be very, very, very fussy. Do your due diligence, make sure they have a track record, and just be very fussy. So as a result, we stay in our lane. We're real estate folks here.
That's awesome. So, John, the fun part is over. Are you ready for fire round?
Fire round. It is. Lay it on me.
Yeah, let's go. Would you be changing business or investment strategy because of the current environment where the inflation has been going up? Now, for past couple of months, it's going down, but then recession is looming around the corner.
We did, actually. We are. We had a large piece of property under contract last year, and we were going to do part of it a good sized multifamily development. And as interest rates started creeping up, it was getting skinnier and skinnier, and we felt like this is not going to pencil. And we also felt like interest rates were going to continue to come up. So we pulled the plug on the deal, and it was painful because we had design work into it, entitlement work, a fair amount of dollars. But we thought, let's pull the plug. And in hindsight, we're glad we did. But I guess the change in our strategy, we're not doing any multifamily. We're sticking to our single tenant net lease and MOB work.
I think that makes sense. Multifamily is going to struggle in near future. So let's see. Favorite non-fiction book, like it could be a self-help or business book, investment book?
Yeah. Well, I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan. I like all of his stuff, but Awaken the Giant Within.
Awaken the Giant is the best.
Yes, I love that book. I think if you're going to get big with real estate or whatever it is, you really need to personally grow and develop. And he is the guru of it, the expert, in my opinion.
That's awesome. Any tool or website you recommend or you cannot live without?
We really like Trello. We use it. It's one of our main tools for project management, collaboration. We all use it for laying out our personal to-do lists and our week, how we manage our week. So we use Trello for a number of things here at the company. I like it.
That's awesome. Any advice for beginner investors?
Yeah, I guess one piece of advice I would give Alpesh is try to pick a sector and really immerse yourself in it and get great at it. By that, I mean, there's single tenant flip, single tenant rental, multifamily, industrial, medical office, single tenant net lease retail. There's self-storage, there's trailer parks, right? There's all these different sectors. And I think if you can find a sector or two that resonates with you, just immerse yourself in it and try to become an expert in it or stay in it, because once you can become an expert in an area, then you really can understand a pro forma. You know if the numbers make sense or not. And this is as an LP, as an investor,
right,
or a developer, whatever it is. So you can really understand what you're looking at instead of maybe knowing a little bit about a lot. If you're going to invest your money, try focusing on a few areas would be a piece of advice I would give.
It's a great advice. How do you give back?
Yeah, well, my wife and I we have been with Children's Hunger Fund for years. We like that particular organization. So much of the money you give goes right to the children. But then also our church, we're able to participate in giving to some really good mission trips. So I would say those are a couple of our favorites.
That's awesome. How can my listeners reach out to you?
Yeah, okay. If someone's interested in investing or looking at that or learning more about that, go to cmkproperties.com and you can look at projects we're doing. We have an investor portal on there, and reaching out to me. We also have CMK Properties on LinkedIn, and I'm on LinkedIn. So I'd say our website or LinkedIn.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, John, for your time today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Have an awesome rest of the day.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the Wealth Matters podcast. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes so others can enjoy the show too. Have a great week and happy investing.